special report. The prospect of a new Chinese-backed power station has put coal back onto the national agenda. And while that could reignite the climate wars, environmentalists are also raising the alarm about the amount of waste that power stations produce. Every year, more than 12 million tonnes of ash is produced by Australia's coal-fired power stations. That's about half a tonne per person, and a staggering 20% of the nation's entire waste. Despite being high in heavy metals, the ash can be recycled, but most of it is being dumped into dams. Ben Millington reports from one area that's feeling the impact, Lake Macquarie, north of Sydney.
This is the country's biggest coastal saltwater lagoon and a playground for sailing and fishing. It's also home to 2 coal-fired power plants, which over 6 decades have filled these dams with coal ash, 60 million tonnes of it.
Most ash dams are hidden behind large fences in power stations, and I would say most people in Australia have never seen one.
The ash is dumped after being captured in the smokestacks at the Vales Point and Eraring power stations. Now there's enough sludge to fill 24,000 Olympic swimming pools, and it's contaminated with heavy metals.
So every time that there is a strong rainfall, those ash dams, they flood, and then these metals can be carried to Lake Macquarie.
Dr. Larissa Schneider has spent years tracing pollution in the lake, which could be damaging the ecosystem.
The fish will stop reproducing, and we're going to lose fish species in the lake before we can see any visual effect. So we should be really concerned before we see something happening with our eyes.
For 20 years, the New South Wales Environment Protection Authority has warned anglers not to eat more than 3 servings of fish from the lake a week due to high levels of the metal selenium in fish. Most ash dams around the world are lined with a membrane to prevent metals seeping into the water table, but not in Australia.
Some of the older ash dams in India, for example, you might find in a similar state to the ones we have around Lake Macquarie.
Eraring's owner, Origin Energy, says it monitors pollution as per its licence, and improvements in ash management have helped it reduce it ending up in the lake. The EPA says it applies stringent conditions, but environmentalist Paul Wynne says monitoring is weak and the power stations should pay for pollution.
I think things will change dramatically if their profits start to be affected.
Hundreds of millions of tonnes of ash sits in power plants across the country. Among the large waste dams, the now closed Port Augusta in South Australia, Liddell in New South Wales and Gladstone in Queensland. There is a solution for what to do with coal ash. It's actually in demand in the construction industry. It can be mixed in concrete to make it more flexible and cheaper, and it also reduces the amount of cement that's needed. But according to some experts, that's the problem.
The cement companies have got other reasons not to utilise fly ash. In other words, they make more money from selling cement-based products than from fly ash.
China reuses 69% of its coal ash, the UK 70% and Japan 97%. But only 20% of ash is recycled for concrete in Australia, and another 20% is used as landfill. The market here is controlled by a handful of cement companies.
We haven't been able to break into the market for the last 20 years because of the cement industry.
These blocks are made with 95% coal ash at a small-scale pilot plant at Mount Piper Power Station in Lithgow, New South Wales. But the company isn't growing. That's despite this product costing a third of the price of a regular concrete block.
We don't have the legislation from the government to encourage the power utilities to utilise their waste. Their attitude is, well, as long as we can keep dumping it, it's okay.
As the closure dates for coal-fired power stations loom, the problem of what to do with the ash will come into greater focus. At the moment, the only rehabilitation plans for these dams is to cover them with dirt. Ben Millington, ABC News, Lake Macquarie.